Welcome to Electric Evolution with Liz Allan. This podcast is about the journey to a more sustainable future in order for us to be able to do our bit to achieve net zero. I'll be discussing a variety of topics with experts in their field in order to educate and increase our knowledge of clean energy, electric vehicles and the electric vehicle infrastructure. So whether you're an individual wanting to make a difference at home, a small business or a corporate, this podcast is just for you. I now have a returning guest and I'm so pleased that he's back. I have got Dr Euan McTurk back on the podcast. Euan, it's so lovely to see you again. Thank you ever so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me back. Great to be back. It's been a while, hasn't it? There's been so many episodes of the podcast since then. It's been really taking off.
You were, and we were just discussing this because I have a little spreadsheet on Google. You were episode 18.
Proper old school.
Which went out. It went out in 2022. It's mad. It really is mad. So, in fact, it was probably 2023 when it went out, now that I'm looking at it. But it's just, it went out 11th of January 2023. See, look, I've even got my schedule in front of me. So it's amazing to think how long ago it is since we've spoken. But yeah, thank you ever so much. Do you know, I want to just start, for those who've not listened to episode 18, back in the days where I was a bit less confident about, and I didn't know very much about kind of EVs and charging and renewables and all this other stuff, and that's the reason why I started. Let's talk a little bit about your background, because you've got so basically you, and I need to introduce you properly, is a consultant battery electrochemist at Plug Life Consulting. He's also, is it a founder or co-founder of Charge Saint?
Yeah,
co-founder of Charge Saint. Now, let's talk a bit about your background. But my question that I want you to think about is, why did a battery electrochemist need to found a company called Charge Saint? And we'll talk about what Charge Saint is in a minute.
Yeah, so it was sheer fluke that Charge Saint ended up becoming a thing. But the kind of the earliest kind of point of this, I suppose, is that I've been working on and driving EVs since 2009, and over that time, I've seen charging infrastructure done well. I've seen it done terribly. And I've seen the injustice of when someone blocks a charging bay, either with a petrol or diesel car, or with, arguably worse, with an electric car, and then they betray their brethren by not even attempting to plug in and just treat it as a private parking space. And, you go on to any of the EV driver forums and everyone's had that happen to them. The space has been iced, in other words, blocked by an internal combustion engine vehicle. You ask them to move, they might move, or they might just ignore you and kind of laugh in your face about it, because they're not inconvenienced that you can't get a charge, even though they are patently in the wrong. These are the same people who would block a disabled bay, for example, or park on double yellow lines and so on. They just think that they can do whatever they want. And the problem is the EV drivers have not really had an ability to effectively deal with this and make sure that something will get done about it. So, this was all happening during day-to-day EV driving for me, whilst I was still very much, working in the lab full-time as an electrochemist, then forming my consultancy and working across a wide range of projects. But the consultancy, as well as looking at fundamental battery electrochemistry, I was looking at electric vehicle system engineering. I was looking at, I say was as if it was past tense, I still am, static energy storage systems and charging infrastructure, because I'd been rubbing shoulders with quite a lot of people in that sector for quite a long time. And it was quite nice to be in a position where you not just know the fundamental electrochemistry and how things work in the lab, but how things work when they're integrated into real-world devices and put into real-world use. So in 2020, Transport Scotland issued a call for ways to deal with icing and finally nip this in the bud.
Yeah.
So there was a former colleague of mine from when I was a full-time electrochemist who's basically the fifth Beatle in this story, because he didn't end up being the third co-founder. But one of his mutual friends, who comes from an Internet of Things background, Colin Balfour, co-founder, and myself were kind of thrown together by this kind of chance encounter to do with this call. And the pair of them had come up with some sort of fantabulous physical contraption that would be strapped to a charge point, and it was hardware based, and it was it was going to be all seeing, and it was going to be brilliant. But what they hadn't considered was that would have cost money, quite a bit of money. And knowing charging networks inside out, as I did through the consultancy, I knew that there was absolutely no way that anyone was going to buy that, especially for a 7 kilowatt Type 2 charge point that doesn't cost very much to install, and the return on investment on that takes a very long time. The revenue from it is a lot less than a rapid charger, of course, because it's a totally different business model. So I said to them, well, we need to kind of take this back to square one and come up with something that's economically feasible as well as technically feasible. And so we scribbled the idea for Charge Saint basically on the back of a napkin and submitted it at the 11th hour. The top 3 projects were funded, and we came fourth. And at that point we realised, well, that was what we did with a very hurried submission. What if we actually flesh this out a bit? And fast forward to the beginning of 2025, and our vision for Charge Saint has come true. The app is now, which we'll obviously explain a bit more about in a minute, is now available on Apple and Android, is being regularly used by EV drivers. But we'll go into that story later on, but it's been much more of a success than even we had envisaged, and there's a lot of excitement about it, not just from EV drivers, but from the charging sector as well.
And actually, that in itself, I've had a variety of experiences at chargers, and when we first spoke, like I said, my knowledge was so minimal, and now 2 years on, it's changed so much. I've got I've got so much more knowledge on this and understanding, and I've spoken to so many EV drivers. What you are providing now, as one of your businesses, darling, is amazing. It's great to see. I love innovation, and this is innovation in the making. So will you explain then what Charge Saint is? You've kind of given a bit of an overview.
A teaser.
Yeah. Whetting the appetite. So what does it do? What can that, so I've got the app on my phone.
Yeah.
People can download it, like you said. You can download it on Apple or Android. So when they download the Charge Saint app, why would they want to download it, and what can they do with that once they've downloaded it? What situations can they deal with?
So Charge Saint is an app that allows an EV driver to report a blocked or broken charge point directly to the owner of that charge point, so that they can take action to either fix the fault or stop the blockage from happening again. So obviously, if a bay has been iced, if it's been bay hogged by an EV that's not even been attempted to be plugged in, or if there is a fault that might not necessarily have been picked up by the charging network's back office, the charge point itself might think it's perfectly fine, but in reality, the CCS plug might have been run over, it might have even been chopped off. Cable theft has been an annoyance recently. The screen might be smashed. In fact, there's a real example from, I'm pretty sure it was Glasgow or somewhere nearby, a few years ago, when there was a socketed Type 2 charge point, so your conventional AC charge point on street. Someone had shoved a cream egg into the socket, and it was like that for months. Because the charge point doesn't think there's anything wrong with it, because nobody's tried to energise that socket. So as far as it's aware, it's fine. But actually, no, it's how do you eat yours? Well, that charge point, apparently it just kind of sits there for months until someone comes along with a pressure washer.
Do you know what I also thought of then? I had Pac-Man in my head, with the cream egg going through the...
it basically, there are so many issues like that, some of which are genuine accident and some of which are blatantly taking the mick. Where the back office hasn't, there's no sensor that's detected that there's something wrong with the charge point. So we provide visual photographic evidence of this, which is far easier for an EV driver to use than a call centre helpline that they might have to hold on, be on hold for ages for, or a text-based, kind of chat box thing where you're like, even just like a web form. So, for example, with ChargePlace Scotland, I've had to report my fair share of faults before, and it's like, you find the phone number, you call up, you hopefully get through fairly quickly. They cannot see what you're seeing, and it might be difficult to describe over the phone. And then if it's a web form thing, I am not going to sit there in the driver's seat of the car tapping it out laboriously on my mobile phone. I'll do that on my desktop when I get home. And when I get home, I can't be bothered anymore. So you lose the impetus to report this, which is important because we need these to be reported so that they can be fixed. We give the photographic evidence that's required, driver's eye view, and that means that engineers at the depot, at the headquarters, wherever, should be able to triage that problem, to diagnose that fault, without having to do a preliminary diagnostic visit. So they can turn up with all the parts and all the tools that they need in the van to get that unit back up and running as soon as possible. That's handy if you live in the middle of London. It's game-changing if your charge point is in the Outer Hebrides, when it takes absolutely ages to get someone across in a van to go and have a look, to then go back to the central belt of Scotland, to then go back again with the parts. The cost savings from the charge point operator's perspective are huge in that sense, and the time saving for EV drivers to get a working charge point again is huge. Similar idea with reporting blockages. We have the visual evidence of that vehicle being there at that location in front of this charge point at this time, with this signage that says that's EV charging only. Because, by the way, whether it's EV charging or whether it's regular pay and display parking, there are some unscrupulous individuals who, when they get a penalty charge notice, a parking fine, go back and vandalise the signage near where they got the sign, so that they say, oh, well, it wasn't obvious, I wasn't meant to park here. With the evidence that you get on the ChargeSight app, the local authority or the charge point operator or the car park owner, whoever it is, can turn around and go, well, that sign was very clearly readable, legible, at this date and time when your car was in front of it. So it's a complete game changer. We give visuals that your ground-mounted sensors don't. The ANPR doesn't necessarily do either, if it's a fixed point of view. And because it's entirely digital, it's super cheap for charging networks to deploy. So there's a lot of provisional interest from charging networks. There's hopefully going to be some big announcements soon. There is a lot of interest from local authorities as well. They've been very enthusiastic about this.
I can imagine. I've had a situation myself. Well, and my husband was talking to you earlier, wasn't he? Where we've had one where I've been on my own, and then me and him have had one when we weren't actually parking in this car park, but we could see somebody had actually iced a space. They'd parked in a space, but actually, so if I go up to, just to explain it to people, so you see a car that is either not plugged in, it's at 100% and they've not moved their car, or it's blocked by a combustion, or you've got a space that's blocked by a combustion engine. So open the ChargeSign app, and then what are the prompts, Euan?
So there'll be a couple of options available. If it's a vehicle that's icing the bay, so in other words, doesn't even have a socket on it, then you choose, obviously report icing or report bay blocking if it's an EV that's misusing the bay, or report broken charge point. The app then gives you very clear instructions. There's an onboarding wizard the first time you run each of those variants, complete with example photographs. So you should have a good idea of the photos that you're going to be taking. And from the plethora of reports that we've received so far, the overwhelming majority of EV drivers get it. So that's great. If you're listening in, by the way, I'm aware that it's an incredibly simple, straightforward app to use, but it also means there's minimal kind of communication to kind of close that loop. Genuinely, thank you everyone who's been doing this. You've been doing a great job. Keep it up. But basically, what we we do is we show you the kind of photographs to take. We then give you a little reminder each time, this is the photograph we'd like you to take just now, please. And then you take that, and then there's a few optional steps that you can do. The more evidence, the merrier. Most people do the majority of the steps. So you just kind of go through that and then submit the report. The longest version of the report, if you were to do every single step, from opening the app to submitting it, takes about 90 seconds. But the kind of more average length ones, you're easily under a minute, and it's quite a discreet thing to do. So again, it's all very self-explanatory. And if you forget anything at all, there's a little kind of help button in the corner of the screen which reminds you, okay, so this is how you do it. So we've designed it to be as straightforward and as intuitive as possible, and to make it as foolproof as possible.
Nice, cool. So if I like, so there was one that but this sounded ridiculous. Okay, there was a whole hub, and this car keeps doing this. I've been down there. It's on the way to kind of taking my son down to Exeter Uni, and we go to this site in Bridgewater. And there's always a Tesla that's parked there and it's not plugged in, but there's nobody else on the site. So, and I've been told off by my husband and my son because I've been like, right, I'm going to report this now, But actually, so I've refrained from doing that because they keep telling me off. But I will do, honestly. But what I was going to say was, for this specific hub, how does that information go to that CPO? Or if they're not kind of, like you said, you've got a number of CPOs who are interested, but there's a lot of CPOs out there. Is it about 140 odd or something like that? CPOs, I can't remember.
Yeah, there's a lot.
So how does it work? Where does it go if you've not got an automatic link with that CPO?
So as we've both alluded to, ChargeSaint works rather than previous kind of iterations of this where you needed the person who owns the vehicle that is blocking the charging bay to be registered on the same app. The likes of your, was it Charge Bumper, Need to Charge, something like that.
Okay.
Where, I mean, not to discredit them because they were important as attempts to keep the charging network moving. But if you have a vehicle that's iced that charging bay, there's no way they're going to be on those. Even
exactly.
if they are on them, there's every possibility that the EV driver might just turn around and go, can't be bothered moving. All that we need, rather than having every single EV driver and ICE driver signed up to our system, all we need is the ChargePoint's owner to be signed up to that. So that means, although, as you say, there's triple figures of ChargePoint operators and triple figures of local authorities, etc., that is a much smaller number to sign up, especially when you've engaged with those local authorities and ChargePoint operators as much as we have, and they have been very enthusiastic about this because, funnily enough, the local authorities don't have a huge amount of money to spare, but they would appreciate that they get revenue from their charging infrastructure. In other words, people aren't blocking it. And if there is a solution that is incredibly cheap to deploy, that makes economic sense to them. Likewise, ChargePoint operators, every second that charge point is blocked is revenue lost to them. So they want to make sure that something's done about it. So if the ChargePoint operator has not signed up to us, we have a list of basically reports that don't have an organisation, an owner associated with them. And that all gets piled into there. But we've got the geolocation, we've got the ID numbers and so on. As soon as a ChargePoint operator signs up to us, not only do they get reports to do with their charging infrastructure and their charging infrastructure alone. You wouldn't want to spam GridServe with what's going on at Instavolt. So you make sure that that it's just for their eyes only. What we would also do is we would run checks on all of our historic orphaned reports, if you wish, where they didn't have a ChargePoint owner associated with them. And if we find any matches, we can show them, well, historically, this has been a problem at these locations. So you'll get an insight of how often it happens. In fact, there have been some ChargePoint operators who, rather than wanting instant digital justice, wanting to be able to send a parking fine to the offending motorist, they're just curious to find out how often these bay blockages actually happen. Because there's not really any proper statistics on icing, because there are not cameras at every single charge point. There are not traffic wardens passing every single charge point at every single point of the day.
Yeah. You haven't
So
got car park officers there either, have you?
no, exactly. So, if a tree falls in the forest, no one's around, does it make a sound? Of course it does. But, if a car ices a charge point and a traffic warden's not around to see it, has it iced the charge point? Of course it has, but we've not been able to log that. Now we will have that evidence because there's a greater chance that there'll be an EV driver that needs that charge point that can report that. So the insight that we give is invaluable, and it's also incredibly affordable to obtain versus having to deploy hardware at every single charge point.
And actually, if there are CPOs listening now, charge point operators listening now, I suggest that if you're not signed up, sign up to it, because for a start off, it's in your best interest. And secondly, data's king. And actually you don't know what you don't know. If it isn't if it's not monitored, it's not managed. So, you've got people who are actually using the ChargeSaint app, who are ready to kind of, we're dobbing people in, but actually this is long term. We have to do this. And actually I said this to you, Euan and I had a very long chat before we started recording, and I was basically saying that when we did our research full circle last year, a lot of the things, a big chunk of the things that came up were to do with, combustion engines at, because basically I asked the question about what were the issues, the biggest issues that people found really annoying. And some of them were icing, there was abusive behaviour, there were people talking about queuing. And actually, if you think about it, and this is not just for you, Euan, but if you think about it, if you've got somebody icing a bay, for example, they're blocking a charger, but then you've also got somebody who's sitting on a charger while the car's at 100%, or they're sitting at a charger and they're not even plugged in because they just want a parking space. That all has a knock-on effect with abusive behaviour, with queuing, and all the other things. All of it all stacks up, doesn't it? So actually, if you can manage this, you're going to end up with less abuse, with people getting angry because when you're moving off the charger, because actually it's not. Hopefully, it'll start quelling it a little bit. That's how I see it. To be honest, I don't know what you think.
No, that's a really good point. And not only that, but you touch upon a very valid point, which is the charging to 100% on a rapid charger. Now, that, of course, is a massive waste of time for everyone concerned, because as we know, as the state of charge of a conventional lithium-ion battery, and I could go into the electrochemistry nerdery about what's coming up in the EV world, but as a conventional lithium-ion battery approaches 100% state of charge, the charge power tapers off massively. And there's an episode of Plug Life Television that covers this in more detail. I think it was the one, am I fine to charge my EV to 100% or something to that effect. I should really know my own episodes I've done, but it was one of the early ones. I know. Yeah,
just need a spreadsheet like I do,
So basically, Plug Life Consulting was spawned out the back of Plug Life Television, and then took all my time away from being able to do loads of new episodes of Plug Life Television. And now ChargeSaint has come along, and it's now a case of trying to spin the plates between the consultancy and ChargeSaint. Goodness me, life's tough being me. Goodness. Anyway, no,
I don't know what to say, Euan. I'm feel so sad.
Yeah, world's smallest violin. Anyway, but but no, charging to 100% on a rapid charger. So yeah, that charge power starts to taper off pretty soon after 80%. Now, inevitably you get your Audi Q8 e-tron drivers at this point who go, oh, well, my car keeps charging at really high power, well above 90%. So, all right, do you want a hat and a balloon? We're talking general here. So 80% and above, you see a massive tapering off of charge power. So bearing in mind it's going to take you potentially just as long to go from 80 to 100% as it did to go from 10-ish to 80%. That's only adding 20% instead of 70%. You are wasting your time going all the way to 100%, especially in an era when somewhere in the region of 80% of the makes and models of new EV on the market today can do at least 200 real-world miles of range per charge, not WLTP. We're talking the EV database real world range, which is far more accurate. Even your used EVs that are available now, there's plenty of 5+ year old ones that can do near enough 200, if not over.
Yeah.
How far do you really need to go on that next leg of your journey? Chances are you're going to need to take a break for a whiz and a sandwich within the next couple of 100 miles anyway. So, charge to 80% and then move on. That is the quickest way. It's genuinely the quickest way to get across the country. There are EV drivers who've done experiments to prove this. That final 20%, 80 to 100% on a rapid charger is wasting everybody's time. But that said, there are some EVs that continue to genuinely take a decent charge power beyond this. So there is a cunning plan which I've devised, which would be an algorithm. And I keep saying this algorithm to any charge point operators, rapid charging operators that will listen. Have a conditional stop on the charging session. So state of charge is greater than 80% and charge power is less than, name a reasonable number of kilowatts, maybe 30. I know that obviously 30 is not particularly rapid, but say your car is genuinely capable of pulling very high tens, if not into the hundreds of kilowatts above 80%. And then it's maybe say 94, 95% that it starts just trickling away to absolute nothing. Cut it at that point, have that conditional cutoff because you've gone below, whether it's 30 kilowatts, whether it's 50 kilowatts, whatever we choose. That's fair because 80% means you've got a decent amount of charge in the vehicle.
Yeah.
But that conditional charge speed means that you're tapering off, you're wasting everyone's time. Move on. Tesla does a far more simple version, which is if the supercharger is busy, then they automatically set the limit of the state of charge in the car to 80%. But they do allow the driver to manually override that.
Oh, do they?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can swipe it up to 100% if you want.
Yeah.
Which I will admit, with my old school Model S, I do this. I do this, but that's only if I'm popping into the service station to grab a T-Bay to grab a proper lunch or something. In case I pop out and the car has spent maybe 5 or 10 minutes not taking power when it could have been at a reasonable charge rate. But inevitably, the car is at, say, 75% by the time I come back out, so I didn't need to swipe it all the way up. But, if you had that conditional cutoff that I've just described, that would have made it fair for everyone. And I think that's something that could be implemented by a savvy charge point operator and should be.
I am still wagging my finger at you here, Euan. And actually, I'm going to stop wagging it because I'm going to challenge you about something you said when we first started talking about kind of the 180% rule. Okay,
Yeah.
You said, as we all know. I'm going to challenge you there because there are so many people, and think about this, right? You buy, you lease, you get a salary sacrifice, you get a second hand, whatever. The EVs come through in whatever form, wherever from. Go out public charging. So at home, you might be lucky to have cross payment solutions. You might be lucky to have a driveway or whatever, or you just have to use public charging. How many people are told about the 80% rule?
Oh,
I don't think there's very many. I've put a little finger up saying zero.
Yeah. Desperately few.
I really, really think there is a massive lack of education about that rule because sorry, I'm going to say this. No bugger knows. No bugger tells you about this. If I hadn't been talking to people like you, I wouldn't know. I tell people about this as well. But the first time I actually went on the EV rally, there was a couple of old dears, bless them, at a charger at near Heathrow, and they were sat dribbling away between 80 and 100, and and nobody tells them. And so my question is, what do we do about this level of education? Where does it need to come from? Because I have lots of thoughts about this, and I don't think, I think it's got to come from a multitude of directions because people learn in different ways. And actually, it depends how you've, like I say, how you've got that vehicle. Tell me what you think.
Definitely the dealers, car manufacturers and their dealers need to be doing more to educate people on optimum rapid charging patterns. Not so much from a point of view of etiquette to keep the network moving for everybody, because unfortunately, you're dealing with a society that can be quite self-centered and can be quite selfish when you're on the road. I move my car off the charger as soon as I'm done with it to free it up for other people. But there are some people for whom they just do not care about that. What they do care about is stuff that directly affects them. And that's incidentally why Charge Saint works, because if you manage to give someone a parking fine for blocking a charging bay, that personally affected them.
Oh, of course
in this case, but in this case, obviously, the whole thing about charging to 100% on a rapid charger, whereas if you only charged to 80%, or if you kept an eye on the charge power, if your car's dashboard tells you however many kilowatts it's drawing, and you see it tapering off to a crazily low amount, if you move on, you save yourself time. And you definitely don't get a refund on time, do you? You've only got time once. So, that time's important to you. There's other things you can be doing with your day. So, absolutely, basically make it as efficient as possible a day for yourself, and do, shorter charging sessions up to say 80-ish%. And if you're doing an incredibly long journey and your car genuinely needs another rapid charge, be safe in the knowledge that taking that quick pit stop further down the road to get you to your destination has saved you time versus charging all the way to 100% to then go down the road and then plug in again all the way to 100% or whatever. Genuinely, those little short stops, like Formula One pit stops when refueling was allowed, they would put in just enough fuel that they needed and no more, and then be on their way. That was the fastest way to get to the end of the race. And in this case, it's the fastest way to get to the end of your day and free up time for yourself. That affects the individual. That benefits the individual. That's what the angle that we need to be taking when we're educating people. So absolutely, it needs to come from the dealers, it needs to come from the manufacturers. To an extent, it needs to come from the rapid charging networks too.
Exactly.
Because that benefits the network as much as the user. And if they point it, if it's painted as, hey, do you want to charge even faster on our kit? Do you want to save yourself time? Well, this is how you do it. You don't need to go to 100%.
Yeah. I mean, I know that there's this whole, people worry about, but if we only tell them that they can get to 80%, they're going to, moan about the EVs anyway and that kind of stuff. Well, but like you're saying, if we're on a long journey, so going down to take James down to Exeter from Reading is I think it's about 165 miles. I'd stop at 100 because 100's enough, or 120, because that's enough for me. And I know Sam Clark and other people talk about bladder range and stuff like that, and that is true. But actually, if we, I know I was kind of bleating it before, but health and safety, people like, I'm sorry, I don't want to say this man's name, but people like Nigel Farage, who thinks he can actually drive for 500 miles. I'm sorry, mate. Have a look at yourself, because you should be stopping at least, after a couple of hours journey, and because you also become dangerous to other people on the road, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, you can maybe do 500 miles if you've got one of those stadium pal things kind of running down your leg, but it ain't doable, especially. Especially, you're genuine. You're going to have to go for like astronaut level long haul here. You need to have. Might as well put an adult nappy on. Because you're, as you say, your bladder and your kidneys are going to get taken out by a 500-mile journey. I recently did a 500-mile journey in a Hyundai Ioniq 5. That's an incredibly rapid charging vehicle. It's insane how quickly that can charge. And I stopped 3 times. The car did not need to stop 3 times. It would probably have only needed to stop 1.5 times. One charge up to about 80% and then another kind of quick boost before heading home. But I needed to stop because the M25 is hellish and it just saps your time, and I needed a whiz. So, I popped into the service station, grabbed a whiz and a sandwich, came back, it's like, wow, this car charges way faster than my old school Tesla. And then I did a couple of other kind of short stops, popped into Starbucks each time, and by the time I'd finished my chai latte and my sandwich, whatever it was. There we are, yeah.
Hello.
This is very good. I think I went with oat milk just to be really annoying.
Oh my
Can't
gosh!
remember.
Did you drink it with your little pinky finger sticking
Oh,
out as well?
obviously, yeah, yeah. It's impossible to retract. Even just taking a glass of water, it's impossible to retract it. Look, it just.
Cheers, hello, hello.
But
Sorry, if you can't see this, then you probably need to watch the YouTube version as well at that point.
yeah, that's what it. So all part and parcel of going to Oxford. Did got my
Of course,
PhD from
darling.
Oxford. I don't mention it
What
very much,
what?
but I do. I do. Yeah. Anyway, so as I say, the charge stops were pretty quick, but most of the occasions that I was stopping, it was more for me than the car. The car had not run down to a particularly low state of charge. But anyone who's done the kind of main Edinburgh to London route, basically along the A1/M1, the fastest route allegedly is the M18, the Doncaster bypass, which is always a car park any time of day. If you go down to Birmingham, as soon as you go south of Lancaster, it's just a car park as
Oh,
well.
that's M,
Um,
yeah. M
and then
M6 is just shocking.
yeah,
Yeah,
and then the M25. So it's not so much a distance thing; it's the time it takes to drive those
yeah.
distances. So
Concentration.
yeah. I mean, that said, I did once do Edinburgh to Coventry in my tiny little Mark I Honda Insight. This was many, many years ago. It's a little petrol hybrid. It's a little two-seater space capsule of a thing. So that was 330 miles I did without stopping. And when I got out, I couldn't feel my legs. It was like, I'm never doing that again. I just did it because it was like, I'm just intrigued to see if I can do this. And exactly what you said there, health and safety, that was not healthy. I very quickly realised that was not healthy. And I will now take a break, typically between 2 and 3 hours, every sort of 2 to 3 hours. And it's the way to go. You're far more refreshed, more alert, safer, healthier as a result. And the car tops up whilst you're topping up as well.
And actually, I think, and I don't think I'm speaking out of turn when I say this, that these days, you were saying people kind of are a little bit selfish with their driving, but also they don't think about their mental and physical health. In in certain cases, we're all just in a rush to get everywhere. And I've been there. I've done it as well. But actually, it's about, I think of that Cadbury's caramel advert, where they're sat there eating their Cadbury's caramel, leaning back and it's kind of, there's none of that. All we're just running all the time, aren't we? When actually we need to kind of be just kind of giving it a little bit of time at a charger. People actually, and I don't know whether this stats, I've seen something recently about, people's mental health and their physical well-being is better when they're in an EV. And I might just be talking out of turn here. I don't think I am. But because of the fact you do have enforced, it's not enforced brakes, but it's sensible brakes.
Oh,
I
totally agree on that. And as I say, my recent 500-mile trek just verified that to myself quite thoroughly. Actually, is the way to go. But actually, probably one of the most enjoyable long distance journeys I've done was if you check out the 2-part episode, the Sky Road Trip in a Short Range EV. On Plug Live Television. That was a 24 kilowatt hour Nissan Leaf, so that was my first modern EV. Realistic range somewhere between 60 and 80 miles per charge.
Bless you.
This was back in 2019, sorry. So, the charging infrastructure was nowhere near as advanced as it is today. But I think we actually ended up stopping about 6 times between Edinburgh and Skye. Part of it was strategic because of kind of gaps in the network between rapid chargers and so on. But on all but one of those occasions, the car was ready to go before we were. And we arrived in our holiday cottage in Skye feeling incredibly refreshed. It was genuinely one of the most enjoyable journeys we'd done. And, because we were kind of stopping every so often in really beautiful locations and kind of checking them out for a few minutes before moving on again, it was a genuinely very pleasant day. And there is an argument to be had about taking an old school, shorter range EV on a nice kind of road trip to some more kind of remote scenic locations, because you end up kind of stopping and exploring more of it. But yeah, we did another video. There should have been an episode of Plug Live Television about a road trip to rural Wales. There should have been another one about an electric road trip throughout the Outer Hebrides. The scenery in both was incredible, but the kind of drama aspect from an EV was non-existent, because by this point we had the old school Model S that easily did 200 plus miles in a single charge.
Yeah,
So it was too easy. It wasn't worth my time to edit it all together. So from the point of view of someone who genuinely just needs to get to where they're going, in an era of 200 plus mile range EVs, genuinely every 2 to 3 hours stop when you need to. Probably the car won't need to by that point.
yeah.
Just for 25-ish minutes, that's the average dwell time at a motorway service station. Get out, stretch your legs, have a nice cup of whatever, and get on the way again. It's far healthier for you. It genuinely does improve your well-being. And this is coming from someone who used to drive a petrol hybrid from Coventry to Edinburgh every second weekend. So I knew the M1 and the M6 and all that off the back of my hand, like the back of my hand, I should say. And yeah, that took its toll after a while. That was with a stop round about T-Bay,
Yeah.
you know.
God,
But
that'd be a killer though, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Oh, flipping heck. Look at you. Goodness me. Well, look, so I was gonna ask you, obviously we've been talking about plug life, but you've been, and I'm going to move a little bit away from Charge Saint now, because
sure.
I just want, just to kind of talk a little bit about all the other stuff that you do. So you know the film Everything Everywhere All at Once, where the woman had the really long fingers. That reminds me of you.
yeah, I do have my fingers in many pies.
You do, don't you?
Yeah. But I like it that way. It mixes up the working week. When I was a full-time lab-based electrochemist, yes, it was enjoyable, but there were interesting projects that I kind of brought to the attention of the powers that be, and they said, well, we're working on this. This is all we have the bandwidth to be able to do. But, being a consultant, with the freedom to kind of work across various different disciplines and bring knowledge from across those different disciplines that I've personally accrued over the years, that's really rewarding. So, there have been, and there shall be again very shortly, some very juicy technical due diligence studies on various kind of battery related things, whether it's new recycling techniques, raw material extraction, design of battery systems themselves. There's been quite a lot of technical due diligence, which has kind of kept my claws sharp in that regard, because it's meant not just looking at whether a product that's seeking investment or seeking selection by whoever does what it says on the tin, but it's looking at what everyone else is up to as well, and it forces you to kind of take stock of just what's out there. And there might be a couple of bits and pieces you'd previously overlooked, and it's actually turned out to be quite an impressive thing that they're doing. So yeah, technical due diligence is very much part of what I do. There'll be so that's one day I'll be working on that. The next it'll be strategy. There'll be a company that's looking to position its products or services in the UK market, and they're looking to try and differentiate themselves from their competitors. What have their competitors not done? Probably despite me telling their competitors what to do for free, because it's like, it's so basically obvious, why haven't you done it? But hey, if they're not going to listen, and this company is going to take it seriously, then we'll sit down, we'll talk strategy, and I can potentially open some doors for whoever, again through the kind of big Rolodex of contacts that I've amassed over 16 odd years of being in the sector. So that's quite good. And then of course there's public outreach as well. So part of the reason I've been a bit too busy to do Plug Live television recently, which I'd love to be able to do, is because I've been doing filming with other channels. So although I think it was at least a year ago this finished now, but there was the Faster project, which in which I was chairing several EV themed webinars, everything from beginner's guide to electric right through to how can we improve charging infrastructure, myth busting of sort of technical misconceptions and things like that, with expert panels that I'd brought in again through the contacts I've got, included chairing an in-person event in Fort William to bring this kind of information to a more remote community where someone would normally have to go down to Glasgow or London to find out that sort of information at a conference. So that was really rewarding. But also we pretended to be on Top Gear for a week. So it was Rick Bullemere from Generate Media and the team and myself. we did some EV reviews at the Arnold Clark Innovation Centre. So huge thanks to Jim Blair for letting us, and the crew for letting us loose with about 10 of their cars for an intense week's worth of filming. But if you go on to the Faster Project YouTube channel, the older set of EV reviews were done by us. I loved the Honda E. I think you can probably tell from the video. There was the old Tesla Model S versus new Tesla Model 3, starring my own machine. And also the EV-powered picnic that we did with an Ioniq 5 and an EV6 at Whiteley Wind Farm, which is the biggest onshore wind farm in the UK.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, that was great fun. And because those cars have vehicle to load, we just brought a kettle and a toaster. I did forget to bring the butter. That was a bit of a sin. But
Oh my God.
very, very dry toast. But no, so there's this public outreach side of it as well.
Well, you were
And,
involved in stop burning stuff as well, weren't you?
yeah.
And I don't. I was trying to think of another word other than firefighting, because that doesn't sound quite right. But basically, it was myth busting and things like that, weren't you? Other areas. So you've been involved in lots of kind of public facing kind of projects as well, haven't you?
True, yeah. So Stop Burning Stuff, which is the kind of fast scientific rebuttal service that was put together predominantly by the fully charged team. So yeah, I was one of the kind of founding members of that, and I was on stage with the stupendous Lorna McAteer and Quentin and Dan and Robert at it was in Westminster, as in not the bit where the politicians were at the time, but a building within the borough of Westminster. But that was still quite cool to launch that. That's now somewhat evolved into EV UK, of which I'm one of the founding members of that as well. But yeah, I mean, there's just so much disinformation. But when we pool resources like this, it means that even though we are all effectively having our time wasted by idiots who malicious actors who spout disinformation, like the oil and gas industry, that fund climate denialists and so on. And then the idiots, well, I say idiots, some people within the oil and gas shills and so on do come across as believable if you don't understand the science yourself, and then people get hoodwinked into it. But you do get idiots who will spout stuff on social media and regurgitate stuff that's years old and was debunked ages ago. But the fact that the likes of EV UK is able to pool its resources, from right across the sector. In my case, I bring in the fundamental battery electrochemistry, as well as a lot of kind of real world industry kind of information as well. But there's a plethora of different people from across, like the energy sector, the automotive retail sector, etc. And we can act very quickly to basically give an accurate rebuttal to some of these nonsensical claims. But it's important that we do that, because disinformation is actively delaying any effort we've got of making the world a better, safer place.
I still can't believe how long this has been going on and how long it's been allowed to go on. I mean, and I can't remember the exact information that I was reading the other day, but it was basically about the government, not to do with EVs, but introducing a kind of a unit that was there was some funding that came in for a specific group, this company, that were looking at the reasons why heat pumps weren't being installed in the numbers that we expected. Because again, like you've just said, there's evidence to say that a lot of there was an underlying negative PR campaign about heat pumps coming through into the UK that everybody believed, in the same way that everybody's believing what they hear about EVs, and like you say, somebody like his mate down the pub said, or her hairdresser said this, or and that's I've had people, friends of mine, kind of say, "Oh, my hairdresser says." And it's, oh my good God, just this information, we've just got to, it's more than viral.
Yeah.
Can you have an information pandemic? Because it feels like it is, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, honestly, the people who are so dead against heat pumps, as you were saying, like the house I'm sitting in just now has an air source heat pump.
Ours
It's
has.
perfectly. Oh yeah, of course, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
The house is perfectly warm. The house
Yeah.
was built in the 80s and has decidedly average insulation. It was not
Same.
uprated
Ours
when
is
the heat pump was put
50s.
in. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I mean, even an even more extreme case, a 1950s house. Okay,
Yeah.
there might be issues with some of the proper old school like sandstone buildings and so on. You'd need to get a proper kind of surveyor to have a look at that and advise on potential upgrades to insulation, etc. But you can get a heat pump to work in just about every property. And to be honest, the majority of properties in the UK will be suitable for a heat pump. You're not going to be shivering to death. And I can tell you now, the water is always hot and the
Oh,
rooms
it's
are always
lovely.
warm. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what's particularly frustrating. Dale Vince, who is a green hero, keeps bashing heat pumps because he has
Does
this
he?
grand ambition to turn the grass that grows at the side of motorways into
Yes.
biogas, which can then be used to power gas boilers. So he keeps
Yes.
having a go. No, he keeps calling heat pumps, I think, warm pumps or kind of like tepid pumps or something like this, because he's like, oh no, you're going to be a bit on the cold side. Oh, it's really expensive. Blah blah. Blah. It's
It's
really
not.
not. It's not.
It's not.
And
No.
I'll tell you something else, Dale. Basic mathematics here. We need your green gas, but not to burn in boilers. So let's say that you have some magical gas-fired combi boiler that is 100% efficient. So all of the gas that goes into it gets turned into heat that comes out the radiators or out the hot water tap. Now let's take that same gas and burn it in a combined cycle gas turbine. So that's your typical gas-fired power plant, which will have an efficiency of about mid 50s to 60-ish%. Now let's transmit that electricity to someone's house, and let's assume an absolute worst case scenario here. So you've had some transmission losses and things. So out of that gas that's gone in, you've only got 50% of that being turned into usable electricity that's delivered to the heat pump. A heat pump has a coefficient of performance of 3. What that means is that for every unit of electricity that goes into powering that pump, it scavenges 3 units of heat from the air. So you take your 50% efficiency, multiply that by 3, and you've got 150% heat out of 100% gas going in, versus 100% gas going into a gas boiler and 100% of that being turned into heat. So using that same gas and then putting it into a combined cycle gas turbine power plant, sending it down some power lines and into a heat pump gives you at least 50% more heat for a home, which means you need less gas burned, which means that you bring down the cost of energy because gas pretty much sets the wholesale price of energy these days.
Yeah, it does.
So yeah, all for the green gas from grass, but gas boilers can suck my pump.
Do you know what? I think that's a really, really, really. And he's drinking his drink with his little pinky finger sticking out. Do you know, on that point, I think I'm going to say I don't think we've got anything else to say on that, because
No,
that
we've
is a
peaked there, haven't we?
perfect. We have peaked, absolutely, and we're actually recording this very late at night as well, aren't we? So, my goodness, Euan, this has been an absolute. Oh my! I haven't got words for it. It's been hilarious, and kind of inspirational as well. And you always are. You always are that kind of person. So, and I haven't said this. I meant to right at the beginning. If it hadn't been for me and my husband having dinner with Euan, when we did, which was kind of around sort of July, was it now, 2023, we would not have got an EV as quickly as we did, because it was after EV Live at Blenheim, wasn't it?
So it was, yeah.
When I rescued you from
Thank you for
when
that.
you had a very long walk, because you couldn't get out the other end, and there's a really, really long walkway.
Yeah.
So, do you
See,
remember?
to the groundskeepers of Blenheim Palace, I'm coming for you, because twice. I was walking up to the main entrance, which is where the bus stop is, because although I have my EVs and so on, multiple EVs, I'll let the train take the strain if I'm going long distance. It means I can get work done. I'm not just
Yeah.
staring at the back of another car for 6
But you
hours.
couldn't
or
get
whatever.
out, could
But I
you?
couldn't get out because they literally
No.
shut the gates as I was walking up to it. There was a buzzer thing. I kept pressing it. You could just tell there was someone in the security office going,
Not
absolutely
letting you
loving
out,
it. Yeah,
mate.
yeah. So then the next day, I was saying to everyone on my way out, it's like, oh no, I better get a move on because they shut the gate on me the last time I was doing that. And then there'd be someone else who's like, oh my god, it's that guy from Flag Life. It's like, yes. Do you want a signed autograph? Okay, there we go. And this kept happening. And then the person went and shut the gate on me twice in a row, and I was so dejected. And Liz, you did come to the rescue because the alternative way out that they were sending the cars, they did not put any thought. They put zero thought to active travel because the cars basically went around the old Nürburgring in Germany, which is like however many miles long, 8 miles long or something. It's more than that probably. Yeah, I'll need to look at it. It's a stupidly, no, it's an 8-minute circuit in a high performance car. So it's like stupid number of miles long. Walking that would have been hell.
I know.
Especially because literally the other side of these giant golden gates was the bus stop for the bus back to
I
Oxford.
must have been so taunting.
Yeah.
There were people at the bus stop like going, no, 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 no.
Pretty much, yeah.
But I just to give you this clarity of this one. So I basically just thought, do you know what? I wonder if maybe Euan's going the same direction as me. I'll just give him a quick call, and he's going, I can't get out. Where are you? And obviously it was a one way kind of going where you go out of Blenheim. It was all one way, so I had to park where I was, and you came and found me. It still took you about 15 minutes to walk to me, didn't it? And I'm going,
Yeah.
You're nearly there. but actually, so after that, we went out for dinner with you, me and my husband, and I want to thank you because if it wasn't for you, we wouldn't have bought the car, the EV, as quickly as we did. So that's my final note. Really, just to say thank you to you. You're an absolute star. If you ever get a chance to meet Euan and you've not already done that, please do, because he's amazing. I'm not just saying that.
Very kind of you. Well, no, thank you. I'm really glad to have genuinely helped on that one. And I'm so glad that you're enjoying your EV as well because, we had a chat about pros and cons of different makes and models, and it looks as if you've found an ideal one for you. I'm chuffed to bits it's working out so well.
Oh, and yeah, absolutely. Honestly, it's just been, it has been, like I say, 2 years since I spoke to you, over 2 years, and what a journey that's been, my God. But look, on that note, I'm going to say thank you. I'm going to say to everybody watching and listening, thank you to you. I always say this, if you can elevate this podcast, if you can share it, listen to what he's just said. We need people to find out about Charge Saint, we need people to be able to, EV drivers or potential EV drivers to know that they can download it. It's a free app. It's not as if you're going to have to pay for it. So just download it, use it, utilise it. If you're at a charging stop, if you're at a hub or wherever and somebody's parked there, they shouldn't be, whether they're a combustion engine, they're parked over, they're just not plugged in or whatever, use it. But please, engage with this podcast. I'm not just saying that. It's to actually help kind of get the word out there. We've got to counter all this negativity. There's so much crap out there, isn't there? As we've just been saying. So like, subscribe, share the post, say whatever. Just send it to people you don't know. I don't mean it like that. But thank you again. Euan, thank you, and thank you to everybody listening and watching, and I'm going to see you next time. Goodbye. Bye. Thank you for watching Electric Evolution. I really love bringing you these weekly conversations about sustainability, renewables, and building a cleaner future together. If you're passionate about positive change, please like, subscribe, and share with others who also care about these topics. You can also download our white paper, Plugging into the Future, at fullcircleci.co.uk and join the discussion on improving sustainable transport, or email me at liz@fullcircleci.co.uk. Thanks for watching. Bye.